Up next, uncover history in downtown Silver Spring. Stay tuned. Welcome to Paths to the Present. I'm your host, Gail Street. Most agree the redevelopment of downtown Silver Spring has been a success. There is a new energy there that comes from expanding employment centers, new retail, and entertainment opportunities, as well as a lot of restaurant options. And while there's a focus on the new, the Silver Spring Historical Society wants everyone to appreciate and remember the old. From its earliest days as a wagon stop on Georgia Avenue to the bustling mid-century suburbs, Silver Spring has had a rich history. The AFI Silver Theater is well known to many. The restoration of that historic structure enhanced the revitalization of downtown Silver Spring, and the recently restored B&O train station at the other end of town provides visitors with a look at our past, fascinating young and old alike. But what many miss is all the history that can be found in between. That's why the Silver Spring Historical Society developed a walking tour. Recently, our cameras went along.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to downtown Silver Spring. My name is Jerry McCoy. I'm the founder and president of the Silver Spring Historical Society. Well, today we're going to go on a 1-mile walking tour of downtown Silver Spring and hopefully educate people about this underlying history that we do have here in downtown Silver Spring. Silver Spring has a history. It may not be the George Washington slept here kind of history, but it's important history nevertheless. We're going to walk up to the corner of Fenton and Ellsworth Drive. Many of the buildings that we're going to be walking by today were constructed in the beginning and the middle of the 20th century. These buildings have managed to hang in there, and now we, the Historical Society, really view them as gifts to the street. One of these examples of a historic structure that has been adaptively reused is the 1947 Hecht's department store building. This was an incredibly important building when this opened up in downtown Silver Spring in November of 1947. This was the very first large-scale suburban commercial development that was built in Montgomery County and, in fact, in the entire country. The department store was designed by Abbott Merkt Company, which was a New York City firm. It's a very severe Art Moderne style of architecture made out of Alabama limestone. It has this vertical fluting with this prominent clock here on the corner of the building. Okay, we're going to walk up now up to the corner of Wayne Avenue and Fenton Street. For those of you who have cameras, you better hurry up and take pictures of these two buildings right here because they're going to be bulldozed. This is the First Baptist Church of Silver Spring. This congregation has been here on the corner of Fenton and Wayne Avenue since 1925. Their original parsonage is this very cute little colonial revival building, and that was the First Baptist Church until 1950, when, because of continued growth, they added the white structure to the left. Well, they kept growing, so by the mid-1950s, they decided they needed to build a much larger facility. So that was when they commissioned an architect named Ronald Senseman, who was a local Silver Spring architect, to design this corner church here. This was one of his earliest mid-century modernism styles that, you look at it, you know it's a church, but it's not your father's church or your grandfather's church. So between these three buildings here, they represent, reflects the growth of downtown Silver Spring as a quickly expanding community in terms of its importance and its population. We're going to cross Fenton Street and proceed up the sidewalk to Georgia Avenue. If you turn to page 3 of your packet, you can see 3 photographs of the building that used to stand here on this site. When this opened up in 1927, this was an important structure here in downtown Silver Spring because of its dual purpose of serving as both a National Guard armory and because it served as our town hall. It was utilized for both social and recreational purposes, and this was a real landmark of the community. The best we were able to do was to have architectural artifacts of the building preserved. What you're looking at here is the state of Maryland flag. These are the two top pieces, and then as we go down the sidewalk, you'll see the two bottom pieces. And if you look at the photograph right there at the top of the center entrance, that's what this was. So here's 50% of the Maryland state flag, and the other 50% is up the sidewalk. We haven't lost everything here in downtown Silver Spring. One of the preservation victories was the saving of Tasty Diner, and I'm sure many of you remember the original location, which sat right over here on the corner in front of the plaza here of the Discovery Building. It was moved down to Cameron Street, just on the west side of Georgia Avenue. It was relocated in 2000. I can't believe it's been 11 years already. It seems like yesterday when there was the marching band and the tap dancers that were serving as the honor guards to take the Tasty Diner down to its new location. It's not quite the same. That 50-year patina of baked on grease that we all loved at the old Tasty Diner location was really scrubbed off at the new location, but at least that original front dining cab portion is still there, and the building now is living into the 21st century. Okay, we're going to cross the intersection now over to the next building. So this is one of the most important buildings that survives. This is the 1927 Masonic Temple building. When this went up, this was the tallest building in downtown Silver Spring, all 3 stories of it. It originally on the ground floor featured a Chevrolet automobile dealership. To this day, I have no idea how they got these automobiles into this building. It's one of the history mysteries that one of these days will be answered. Okay, we're going to cross Georgia Avenue now to the other side of the street. So let's make our way up. I love this building. The state of Maryland had 13 post offices that were built in the 1930s, between 1933 and 1942. Montgomery County was the recipient of 3 of these post offices, Bethesda, Rockville, and Silver Spring. This was the first federal building constructed in Montgomery County, which I think is also kind of an important fact. It's really a beautiful building, and this is on the master plan for historic preservation. I just want to point out this 1931 plat map of downtown Silver Spring, which is on page 5 of your pamphlet. What is amazing about this map, and you'll be able to see this as we walk south down Georgia Avenue, is that most of these buildings are still here. So here we have this almost time capsule of mid-20th century Montgomery County, of a mid-20th century community, and most of these buildings are populated by what we call mom and pop businesses, really hard-working folks that have devoted their lives and their finances to opening up businesses, and we really want to try to hold on to these unique businesses. So we're sort of working here a dual purpose of not only trying to say, you know, the history of what these buildings embody, but the mom and pop businesses that occupy them. A great example are these 2 buildings right here. These were constructed in 1924. There had been a fire in this building. This was an Army recruiting center, and this building sat a shell for over a decade. The owner preserved the architectural details of the building. He did an awesome job. We were really heartened that he thought it was important to save the original facade of this building. We were equally thrilled when Velati's moved in to this location here. You can't get any more historic a confectionery than Velati's. Velati's opened up in 1866 in Washington, D.C. They went out of business in the 1980s, and about a year ago they reopened, and they chose downtown Silver Spring as their location. A lot of fun researching this building here. This opened up in 1925. This was originally the Silver Spring National Bank. the president of the bank, James H. Sissel, who's one of what we consider the founding fathers of downtown Silver Spring. And when he built at this location here, he decided to have a multi-use project which incorporated a bank, commercial, and then a movie theater. The first movie theater in downtown Silver Spring was this building here, which is now the Bethel World Outreach Church. This opened up in 1927. This was a 500-seat movie theater, cost $60,000 to build. Sometime in the 1970s, there was a fire in this center building here, which totally destroyed the structure. So that's why we have this gap here in the store frontage. And the Bethel World Outreach Church has their playground for the kids of the parishioners. We're now at the corner of Ripley and Georgia Avenue. On this corner that we're standing, right where the gravel is, that was the footprint of this building here, the Little Tavern Hamburger Shop. Harry F. Duncan was the founder of the Little Tavern Hamburger chain. 1928, he opened up his first Little Tavern Hamburger Shop on East Street. Within a couple of decades, there were almost 50 little taverns located in the Washington metropolitan area. So these became very, very successful, the Little Tavern Hamburger chain. In 1940, he relocated his corporate headquarters from Washington, D.C. into this red building. Harry Duncan's offices were the second floor, a corner building, that window. But his name is still embossed in gold letters on the door that goes into his office, Harry F. Duncan. I just want to point out, without a doubt, one of our greatest historic preservation success stories. Fire Station Number 1. This building was originally the Silver Spring Armory. This was constructed in 1914. Within a few years, it was also being used by the Silver Spring Volunteer Fire Department. 1927, the Maryland National Guard decides to build a new armory, so that frees up the space for the Volunteer Fire Department Number 1 to utilize the entire building. This building was purchased about 4 or 5 years ago by Jeremy Gruber, who wanted to open up a restaurant. They've opened up, they've been successful since the day they opened. We're really proud that they're down here because economically this has been really tough for these mom and pop businesses down here because they're so far off the beaten track from the real downtown Silver Spring of Ellsworth Drive, where all of the chain businesses are. So the more and more we get these new restaurants and businesses opening up here, I think this is really going to start drawing people down here to South Silver Spring. Okay. If you look on page 5 of your packet, back to this 1931 plat map, locate the Silver Spring Station, which is right at the bottom. Do you see the tracks that branch off from the B&O line? And then there's one branch that goes clear across Georgia Avenue. So here is a piece of that spur line that we were able to have retained, courtesy of the Montgomery County government that actually paid for it. We marked exactly the positioning when they picked it all up. They put the 2 rails back right where it is. They did this really nice job with these brick pavers. And then we conclude with our greatest success story, the 1945 Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Station. Historically, train stations are the acorn from which a community has grown from one end of this country to the other. It was because of train transportation that created this nation. And so many of these train stations have been lost. I mean, these are the true heart and soul of a community. It's been 10 years since it was restored. We're really proud of it. We got it placed on the National Register of Historic Places. So that concludes the tour.
Well, that's all the time we have for this show. If you have comments for us or ideas for future shows, send an email to paths.present@verizon.net. Be sure to tune in again next time when we follow more paths to the present. See you then.